Thank you very much for inviting me and having me today. Let me share my screen. Yes. So, a few words about myself. My name is Stepan. I'm CTO at StateU, Amsterdam. I'm doing Angular for quite a long time. I am organizer of 2 meetups in Netherlands and also in Ukraine. If you're interested to present something on those meetups, please contact me. Also, sometimes I'm doing workshops, and currently I'm creating Angular Pro screencast. I strictly recommend you to check it out. It's on YouTube and it's 100% free. Also, for any questions related to this talk or something else, you're also welcome to ping me in my Twitter, that you can see it here. So I decided to split my talk into 2 parts. First one is just a quick introduction to Scully. For those who haven't touched it yet, it would be pretty handy. And then we switch to actual topic comparison, the server-side rendering on Scully and Universal. What would be the best for you? So let's start with Scully. What is Scully? To answer this question, first we need to understand whether we know what Jamstack is. And the goals for Jamstack are pre-render everything that you have on site. Still, you want to boot your single page application. You can cache all the calls, so you're not doing a lot of unnecessary calls. So you can use all the power of CDN, not only for assets, but for actual HTTP calls. It means you can decrease the cost and increase security because everything is static. And simplify your production environment as much as possible. So, and it's more or less clear what Jamstack is. And what is Scully for Jamstack? Again, Scully is just static site generator. And the goals of Scully, the same goals for Jamstack, except that we do it for all Angular projects. And there is no, or almost no effort to integrate it into Angular projects. Some editions of Scully that it support Markdown, that it's pretty convenient for content generation. Also nice plus that Scully supports plugins. So it means you can create your own plugins and also use existing plugins for any specific task. And speaking about Scully static generation, before we have, before on just normal Angular application, we have Angular HTML. And after we generated it with Scully, you have a lot of index.html files. Basically, for each router, Scully will generate index.html file for you. It looks like a lot, especially if you compare that initial index.html file is only 1 kilobyte, and after Scully it gets 26 kilobytes. But if you look deeper and just take into account that for Angular you will still have to load all the other files, the difference is not for Angular. So for an empty application, you will have almost 400 kilobytes against 26 kilobytes. So, and on a very high level, how Scully works. First, Scully needs to identify all your routes and then generate pages for all these routes. And if for some reason Scully either doesn't recognize some of the routes or doesn't generate the page as you expected, you can use plugin system that is already there. So for define exact routes or to help Scully to define some routes, you can use router plugins. And to generate pages, you will use render plugins. Let's have a look at a router plugin example. You have in your application some routes. And as you see, you have some standard routes, and one of those routes goes with parameter. So we need to provide an ID to get the page. Scully doesn't know about it. So Scully will not be able to generate all the possibilities of IDs. That's why we should help Scully and create router plugin. For example, in our case, we can call it cat plugin. And with help of this plugin, we can request our server side, it could be just CMS system, and get all the IDs. So after that, Scully will be able to create those routes and generate pages for them. Let's now do a bit of coding. So I created such an application. Let me show you. It's very simple. It presents exactly these routes. If you go to router config, we will see them. So if we go to our page, here you see some standard pages and our cats page. And if you click on one of the cats, you can see some details of these cats. This is just a simple Angular application. To add Scully to it, we will use help of Angular schematics and specifically command ng-add and add Scully io/init. and it will do a bit of magic. It will add Scully module for us and install some Scully dependencies. Maybe it will not. Okay, let me do what always works. Let's do it one more time. Yeah, I hope one day NPM modules will be faster.
That's our prayer, actually.
Yeah, that is especially when you like installing the same modules like each day or even each hour. Like I prepared this demo today, so I already installed them, but still take quite some time to install it, reinstall them.
Anyway, but it's cool. It's cool. Think until then we really have to just cope with the fact that we have to be waiting for quite some time.
Yeah. And it's really strange error. It always happens when you want to make a demo, especially live coding. Okay, good. Now everything added. And also Scully adds Scully config that we will update later. But for now, let's just compile it. So to compile Scully, first we need to build application. Normally you would build with for production with -- prod flag, but right now we can just do normal build to make it a bit faster.
Don't you usually so this is not building it to production?
No, right now not. Just to save some time for the demo.
Oh, okay, no problem.
But you are right, for production we would obviously put it the correct flag. And when we have our static files, we also run Scully generation with help of command npm run Scully. And after that, you will see in your dist folder 2 folders. The normal one that ngbuild generate for you, project name, and also /static. Now Scully analyzes the roots, and as you see, we got such roots. Home one, about, settings, and cats. Unfortunately for us, no cat/ID. But okay, we will be there. How to fix it? To fix it, we exactly need to write router plugin, and it's really easy. To write router plugin, you just need to import register plugin method, and in our roots specify that we would like for such a path ID. We would like to use a plugin. Let's call it cats plugin. And now with this help of this function, we can register our plugin. It's gonna be a router plugin. Keep it this name as we registered. And I think handler. Great. And here we can just easily return all the IDs. Right now I'm not using backend, so you can check that all cats are in my service file, in your service file. So we can here for the demo simply hardcode these roots. It's 5, yeah, 5 IDs, okay. So and that's basically it. Let's check it again. So we don't need to rebuild our application. We just change the Scully config. So we rebuild Scully. And voila, as you see, now we have those roots that we're missing. Now all the index files were generated. Now let's run Scully server, and to run Scully server, we run command npm run Scully ;serve. And here you can see 2 links. First is just standard Angular one is Scully static file. What we can see here, obviously, if we check response, it's not just an Angular application anymore. All the content is generated into HTML. And it still works. You can still go page by page. Also, what's interesting, that like for Jamstack, you can completely disable JavaScript. So I'm disabling JavaScript. I can refresh my page and it still works. It wouldn't be possible with just an Angular to do so. Let's switch back JavaScript. And also we can compare slow internet connection. If we open both, Angular 1, let's have page with something and put on 3G connection. And refresh the page. And it could take quite some time. We are not taking into account images right now. Yeah, of course, images are not related to application, but it was some period of time till you see the application. And it's super simple, and it's still heavy. If we refresh here, you see application almost immediately. And then you will load the images. So with Scully, you have such a benefit of loading sites even on slow internet connection quite fast. One more thing about Scully. It has possibility to have blog based on Scully, and it is already there. You can activate it with one command. ng generate Scully.io/init blog. If you check your routes, you will see that now you have specific route for your blog. And also you have blog like MD files here. So you can write your content. Title. And very important thing, I was struggling when I started with Scully blog. I was struggling for quite a long time. I haven't noticed this flag. If you want to publish your post, you need to change it. Either you need to remove it at all, or you need to change it to true. make it possible to see your post generated into HTML after. So let's recompile our Scully. And now we will use special flag and roots to let Scully know that we are adding something extra. That it will be able also to regenerate it. You see our roots that were generated previously. And also our root for blog is also generated into HTML into index.html file. And we add this link. Yes, of course, we need to run Scully again. And for some reason, it's not generated. Yeah, you see that the content that is something strange. We have blog module. Oh yes, obviously. After we added the blog, we should rebuild the application. We didn't rebuild the application.
Stepan, so as we continue waiting, so a quick question. So, for example, now you're building this to production. So we know that, of course, it's the dist folder that usually is taken into account. So personally, I'm used to like seeing the index.html. So how does it work hand in hand with Scully when it comes to production?
Very good question. When it comes to production, you just need to upload your static folder, and that's it from dist.
Okay, so
somewhere on CDN, you don't need server. Well, only server to serve static files.
okay. So when you're choosing when you want to direct your root folder, you have to go into dist and then static.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
And here we have our blog post. Everything is generated. We can run not Scully, but we can run just any static server you prefer inside this static folder. And you will be able to run the same result, the same page, as you see. Using external images, and they don't like not to be localhost, so but the rest works as it should. That was just static server. Okay, that was it for basic introduction of Scully, and we can go next. Router. Oh yeah, in addition also to router, I put it here because I didn't want to use server, but if you have we looked at very simple example of router plugin where we just hard-coded all the IDs, but normally request all these IDs somewhere from server. And in this case, you can also run requests here in this plugin that we created, but there is already better option that created for you. It is called JSON. And you just need to specify what parameter do you want to get from specific URL. And you will go for some API and specify the property to take from this API. And for Scully blog, I just made here some notes for you if you would like to try it later. That it could be convenient. Also, do not forget to put publish true. Now we are moving more close to our main topic about comparison of Angular Universal and Scully. But before, we need to understand the difference between server-side render, because actually the name of the topic was not totally correct. I called it server-side rendering comparing to Scully. But in fact, what I meant is Angular Universal against Scully, because both, or not both, sorry, server-side rendering is more general term, and Angular Universal is a tool to implement server-side rendering. And why we actually need server-side rendering, that's also good to understand. First thing that probably comes to our mind is SEO optimization. You want all search crawlers to see your site like it's static, because well, search engines are getting smarter and smarter in terms of parsing your single page applications, but still not smart enough. That's why still it's a nice option to provide some static data. Also, what we just seen, it's first screen. First screen to show is really important, especially on mobile applications, especially when internet is not that great and you can immediately provide some experience to user. And also, third nice addition, with static files, you can have really nice social preview experience. When you share link, when somebody shares link to your site via social networks, they tries to get some content out of it and make a preview, some image, and so on. So you have much more options here with server-side rendering. So, and now let's compare what do we have for Scully and what do we have for Angular Universal. First, how we initialize it. With help of Angular schematics, now it's really easy to do both. Command ng-add helps us to add either ng universal, express engine, or Scully initialization. So here we have the same simple approach. Second thing to compare is how we set up our dev environment. And for server-side rendering is again, for Angular Universal is again quite convenient. They already created some shortcuts and you can run it with one command. With Scully, it's a bit confusing, I would say, that you need to run 3 things. Probably if you're working with Scully a lot, you will make also some alias commands somewhere in package.json for you to run it. But again, it's nothing difficult. It's nothing special to compare, to config, and we can say that they are the same. But if we take into account also in dev environment rebuild option, here for rebuild, Angular Universal dev server works the same like just ng-serve. So if you change something, it will recompile it automatically. For Scully, unfortunately, there is no such option. So if you change something, like we saw with our blog, we have to rebuild. Sometimes we need to rebuild not only Scully, but also application itself. Ideally, of course, maybe it will be implemented in future. It will be really convenient for development purposes. Speaking about production environment, what do you have for production for both? Angular Universal, well, not that bad. We build application and we need then to serve it. But here we need to have node server comparing to Scully, because for Scully we just generate Scully files like I showed you in a static directory, and then you just upload them. But for Angular Universal you need to set up Node.js server. For small project maybe it's not very convenient. Yeah, and here, as I said, you can just upload your files somewhere on CDN or some free static hosting. There are a lot of them nowadays. What else can we compare? We can compare, of course, rendering. Probably the most important thing. And speaking about rendering, you should understand that Angular Universal is doing it without real browser. So it uses ngExpress engine to do some magic and to render it into HTML. And Scully uses real browser. So it uses Puppeteer. That's why we have some advantage here. We are not afraid of some old jQuery plugins that pretty often touch some global objects like window, document, and that we should prevent from Angular Universal. For Angular Universal, it's like if you already have old project with old jQuery plugins, it will be really hard to set up Angular Universal there. I'm not saying that you need to use, if you have new project, that you need to use some jQuery plugins. I would rather recommend you not to use all of those. But if you already have some legacy things and it's a lot, it's hard to remove at once. So Scully definitely the option here. And just-in-time compilation. Angular Universal is built for it. There is no problem to build it on fly by request. And with Scully is a bit different story, because we expect, like, or Scully expect us that we regenerate all the pages before calling. So when the user call the page, we provide already static files. And what's the situation with partials? Partials are more or less good. So you can generate one specific router, one specific page with specific parameters in Angular Universal. And maybe not that flexible, but still you can specify page to regenerate. It could be really convenient, and that's what I set up for my blog. When I update one of MD files, I don't want to regenerate all the blog. I want to re-render only these specific MD files into HTML, only new article that I wrote. So with help of some Git commands, you can come up with a flag for Scully to regenerate specific file only. And now let's look at some benchmarks. So first one is speed. And this is interesting one. That was, I think, obvious from the very beginning that Angular Universal is more mature, that it should be faster. It doesn't use real browser, so it definitely should be faster. But still, up to 1,000 roots, the speed are not significantly different. And for small sites, you will not even see the difference. But if you have more than 1,000 roots, and on, like when we see on the graphs, when you have 10,000, the difference is huge. If you need to regenerate a lot of pages, if you need to regenerate them fast, you need to go with Angular Universal. Next one is also important, is file size. File size, here we have pretty much the same results. So I would say that Angular Universal and Scully are doing the same here. I also provided, I took this analytics from Sam Fluberg, and I provided a link to his article. You can check more details and get actual application and check results yourself. So what else? What else do we have? For Scully, as I showed you, we have system of plugins. System of plugins that provides this real flexibility. You can completely control the process, starting from defining which routes to take to how render them. And as I mentioned here, we can even remove Angular completely. So starting from Angular application, you created Angular application, but in production, you can remove Angular files completely and it will still work. And sometimes for just marketing blog pages, maybe you don't even need Angular on those pages. And it's good in terms of performance, completely remove Angular when it's all generated. Also, as I showed you, you have your blog that you can activate with one command. And generate new post with another command. And close to blog goes functionality that helps you to convert your MD files into HTML files. So, as a conclusion, what to use, Angular Universal or Scully? It actually depends pretty much on your project. If you have a lot of files, a lot of routes, a lot of pages to regenerate, you need to regenerate them on the fly by request. Of course, you have to use Angular Universal. If you have small project or you have a big project with a lot of legacy and you don't need to regenerate your pages on fly, you can generate them and then just upload to CDN, then obviously Scully is the better option. So, asante for your attention. If you have any questions, that's probably the right time to ask. And you can ask them, always can ask them later in just ping me via my Twitter.
All right. Thank you very much, Stepan. So guys, the floor is open. So whoever has a question, please just unmute yourself and ask the question.
For me, I'll just say it's just a comment on this topic, because actually for me it's the first time I've been introduced to it. I've never thought about static pages while handling while working with Angular. So I would just say thank you to the speaker, Stepan, for this introduction to something that I've not really looked at. And I'm trying to actually put my mind where would I actually use this at the place where I do my work. So probably just talking about it's more to do with websites. If I was think about it like that, I would love to see more on the dynamic routes, especially for the IDs when you're showing how you're generating the static ones. Yeah, I think, but other than that, just say thank you.
Thank you for feedback. I think the nice example would be the simplest where to find and where to use Scully is just to have your blog on Scully. I had my blog on WordPress and I regenerated it with help of Scully, and now I have it on Scully, and it's fast. And I also did search, tags, and all the things on client side. So that's why it could be pretty convenient. Also, I wrote an article how to do it really easy in terms of WordPress migration. In a few steps to migrate to Scully. Any other questions?
Any other question or comment or just appreciation? Please just unmute yourself and let us know. Okay, let me just say, so for me, I think mine is also more of a comment because my question, you already answered it while during the session. Yeah, thank you very much, Stepan, for actually taking us through this session. Because personally, I've just heard about Scully. I think there was a time like some sort of like a debate was going on Twitter. They were like, "Oh, how can you compare Scully to Gatsby?" Because like Gatsby was it's more of like what Scully does, but then for React applications. And then for me, I was really I don't know. I was on the fence about it, but you've actually cleared the air. Like, let us, you've actually let us know how we could definitely use it in our applications, and I'd like to say a big thank you for that. I know for sure people over here who have attended this session and those who probably look at this video, they'll definitely appreciate the fact that I've actually gone like a basic intro on Scully and also at the same time Angular Universal, because myself also again, I think there's a time I used to be scared of these terms, Angular Universal and all that. I'm like, I'm still a beginner. I don't even know where to start. And I'm already hearing about Angular Universal. But you breaking it down simply and telling us how they work and how they differ between each other, like that is Scully and Angular Universal, makes it a bit easier and a bit friendly also for people who are beginners and who are just joining the Angular world. But I'd like to say a big thank you for that.
You're welcome. For me, from the very beginning, it was also the question that where actually this topic started, because I thought, okay, Scully, but we already have Angular Universal. Why do we need Scully? And I started looking into the subject, and yeah, I found some answers for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any closing remarks before I close off the session?
No, probably that's it. Only one question. I hope I wrote it correctly on Swahili.
Yeah. So you are actually, yeah, that means thank you for your comments and suggestions. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But that's actually okay. That's actually good. And thank you actually for getting to learn Swahili at the same time. Thank you very much. Yeah, but anyway, guys.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining this session. Uh, we'll have the recorded session up on YouTube by tomorrow in the afternoon. So be sure to follow Angular Kenya on YouTube. Just subscribe, hit the notification button so that at least you can always be alerted whenever we upload new videos. But thank you again, Stepan. From the bottom of our hearts, we say asante and shukran sana. That's how we say it also in Swahili. For
Okay.
taking the time and
Shukran sana.
taking us
Yeah.
to, yeah. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and I'd like to say goodbye, good evening, and good night.
Yeah. Goodbye. See you.